Luxford, and now it's Bank Holiday Monday, the perfect time to catch a film. But what is actually worth watching? Let's save the hassle and speak to someone like James Luxford, who's a film critic, and they join me now. Hey, James, how you doing?
I'm not too bad, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. So, first of all, big new release is Disney's Cruella. What can you tell us about it?
It is the big new release in cinemas and on Disney Plus Premium now. It tells us of the early days of the evil villain of 101 Dalmatians, Cruella de Vil, played by Emma Stone, and her time in 1970s London in the fashion industry.
And what did you make of Cruella herself, Emma Stone? Did you think it was she played a good part?
Do you know what? I really wasn't that keen when in the build-up to it. I didn't really know why we needed to hear how a villain became so villainous. You know, I think back to Oz the Great and the Powerful, which for me wasn't a great movie and suffered by the fact that I'm not sure why we needed to know how the Wizard of Oz became the Wizard of Oz. Here, however, they do make a really good case for showing the origins of the character. Emma Stone is just fabulous in the lead role. Emma Thompson is wonderful as a protagonist, a very kind of Anna Wintour-ish, a little bit acerbic kind of fashion house owner. And it's just a very vibrant, very energetic movie that I really enjoyed.
Oh, well, let's have a listen to it. Let's listen to Emma Stone in action as Cruella de Vil.
Let me give you some advice. You can't care about anyone else. Everyone else is an obstacle. You care what an obstacle wants or feels, you're dead. If I'd cared about anyone or thing, I might have died. You have the talent. Whether you have the killer instinct is the big question.
She thought she owned everyone.
It's foolish. Unhinged. Well, you're fired. Why are you speaking?
I think you've nicked me. But there's something about poetic justice that's just so poetic.
You won't admit you love me, and so how
Do you have a light?
to know? You always tell me.
Get her.
This doesn't have to be a scene.
It really, really does. I'd like to remind you all that I'm doing this in heels.
What was your name?
Cruella.
Oh, now, James, I was low-key scared of Cruella when I was growing up. Is she scary in this?
I don't think she's scary. I think it's sort of, I suppose, sort of a very family-friendly version of what happened with Joker a couple of years ago, inviting you to sort of revel in the darker side of things, but in a very sort of fun way, a very kind of Disney way, and I think there's a lot of laughs in there. To me, the Maleficent films, the problem I always had with them is that I think they veered too much on the side of being sympathetic towards what is essentially a villain. A villain, there's nothing wrong with a villain being villainous. And with Cruella, I think they give her a story without, sacrificing that kind of pantomime element to it.
Yeah. And another huge release is A Quiet Place Part 2. My housemates went to go see both of them last night because I think the cinema in Whitney was showing both, the first and then the second one, so you kind of had a little marathon. What can you tell me about A Quiet Place Part 2?
Well, it's the highly anticipated sequel, and I think for many of us, one of the signs, at least if you're a film fan, that the pandemic last year was really veering into what it became, because it was one of the last movies that were meant to be shown before we went into lockdown that were eventually moved, and it follows the deadly events of the first film, and the Abbott family, led by Emily Blunt, of course, now facing the terrors of the outside world. And I thought this was terrific. I think John Krasinski really surprised as a director with the first film. Of course, we all know him from The Office and lots of different comedy movies. But as a writer and director of a horror film, he really surprised everyone. And, of course, Emily Blunt as well, who I just think is tremendous in so much of what she does. I think it's hard to talk about without giving too much away, but it is a really thrilling, tense movie with some great additions. Cillian Murphy joins them on their survival journey, and I think if you're a horror fan, I think if you're a fan of those movies where you're just sort of peeking through your fingers because something's just about to jump out or break the silence, I think you're going to love it.
Oh, okay. And obviously having a power couple like John Krasinski and Emily Blunt who are married and have children and they're doing like a horror film, I think their kids are going to grow up and be like, wow, okay, my mum and dad are cool, because they are. But let's have a listen to A Quiet Place Part 2, the trailer.
I don't know why you came all the way up here. There's nothing left.
There are people out there. People worth saving.
Most people had finally given up hope.
The suspense of that, James. I don't give away much there, but this is one of the last films to be pulled before the pandemic, as you said. It's been billed as one of the big films to welcome us back to the cinema. Is it worth the hype?
I think so, yes. I think it's a very well-made film that continues the story of the first one while also giving us what we enjoyed about the first film. I'm not sure, with so many sequels, the first question is, where do you go from here? Is there a reason to bring the characters back? And I think they find a way.
Lovely. Well, we're going to go to Peter Rabbit 2 very, very shortly. We're just going to play Janet Jackson now. Janet Jackson Whoops now on BBC Radio Oxford. We're talking films. So when the sun's gone in, when it goes in this evening or when the sun sets, you can stick a film on. But what ones are worth watching? I've got TV and film critic James Luxford here. So, James, we are now going on to the one for the family. Kind of the opposite, the complete opposite to A Quiet Place 2. Peter Rabbit 2. Have you sat through that one?
I have sat through that one, and it's another one that I think was a strange... it almost seemed like little messages from another universe when we were in lockdown, because the advertising had begun for this film's original release, which should have been last Easter in 2020. But the posters were up and the merchandise was out, the tie-ins were in the shops, and it was a strange one, but we're finally seeing it, and it reunites with Peter Rabbit, and he can't seem to shake his reputation for causing havoc, and after, I suppose, pushing away his newfound family, he moves to a big village nearby and gets into all sorts of trouble.
Oh, let's have a listen.
We are gathered here today to join Bea and Thomas in holy matrimony.
You're taking this so well.
He's a good man.
You hated this guy.
We've grown very close.
Welcoming a new parent,
Not that close.
a father.
Father?
Father.
No, you're not my father.
Peter, the ring. Right, sorry.
Are you the author?
It's really the rabbit story. I just wrote it down.
Look, Dad, it's Peter Rabbit.
I hate that I'm the face of this.
He's a little naughty.
What?
Are you Peter?
That depends who's asking.
Peter, stay out of trouble.
Told you he has it in for me.
He was talking to all of us.
I'm talking to you, Peter. Specifically, stay out of trouble. Trouble.
If that's who they think I am, maybe I'd be better off without them.
Oh.
Oh, come on.
Oh, it sounds like an all-rounder, everyone enjoy it kind of film. But out of these three, James, what would be your top pick?
I think my top pick would probably be Cruella. I say that as someone who's a little bit of a wimp with horror movies. So if you do like horror movies, maybe go towards A Quiet Place too. But for me, Cruella really delivered and surprised me. I love a movie that proves my expectations wrong. I love being proven wrong about when I walk in and think a movie is going to be one thing and it turns out to be something completely different. Yeah, so for me, it's Cruella, but I think a close second will be A Quiet Place too, and probably a good first choice, again, if you've got a real passion for horror and a real passion for jumping out of your seat.
It must be quite hard to kind of shock you or surprise you as a film critic because there's a lot you've seen and, it's your job. So knowing that Cruella has surprised you in a really good way, that makes me feel like I've got full security knowing that it's James Luxford approved. So James, thank you so much for chatting with me and have a good Bank Holiday Monday, okay?
Thank you very much, you too.
Thank you so much.